Dr. Zyx'lorp stared at the monitor, his 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession as he tried to process the information scrolling across the screen. The Galactic Medical Conference was supposed to be a relaxing affair, a chance to schmooze with colleagues, maybe learn about some groundbreaking new treatment for scale rot, and indulge in the complimentary buffet of assorted xeno cuisines. But no, the universe just had to throw a curveball his way in the form of a human, a Deathworlder no less. "I swear by the 7 moons of Rigel," he muttered to his assistant Dr. Qwerty, who, despite the name, was most certainly not from Earth. "If I have to deal with one more of these creatures today, I'm going to molt right here in the conference hall." Dr. Qwerty, a gelatinous blob with an impressive array of sensory tendrils, burbled sympathetically. "So perhaps we should take a break, sir? I hear the Andromeda Pavilion is serving some delightful methane smoothies." But before Zyx'lorp could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance of the medical bay. A group of panicked aliens were half dragging, half carrying a limp form through the doorway. As they approached, Zyx'lorp's heart sank. It was another human. "Oh, for the love of," he began, but was cut short as the group deposited their burden onto the nearest examination table. "She just collapsed," squealed a Venusian delegate, his antennae quivering with distress. For 1 minute she was regaling us with tales of her planet's extreme sports, and the next boom. Face first into the hors d'oeuvres. Zyx'lorp sighed, all 4 of his hands massaging his temples simultaneously. All right, let's see what we've got here." He approached the table, eyeing the unconscious human warily. She was a tall specimen, with the characteristic bipedal form and alarming lack of protective exoskeleton that made her species so baffling to the rest of the galactic community. As he began his examination, he couldn't help but marvel at the sheer audacity of these creatures. Here they were, bags of mostly water, hailing from a planet with such high gravity and atmospheric pressure that it would crush most sentient species. And yet, they insisted on hurling themselves off cliffs for fun or racing at ludicrous speeds in metal death traps. It was enough to make a sensible being's chromatophores change color in sympathy. "Vital signs," he barked at Dr. Qwerty, who was already interfacing with the medical scanners. "Erratic, sir," came the reply, accompanied by a concerned ripple through Qwerty's gelatinous form. "Heart rate is fluctuating wildly. Blood pressure is, well, I'm not sure our equipment is calibrated for such high readings. And there's some kind of obstruction in her circulatory system." Zyx'lorp frowned, his lower set of eyes narrowing as he studied the readouts. "Obstruction? Where?" "Near the heart, sir. It appears to be moving." "Moving," Zyx'lorp repeated incredulously. "What in the name of the cosmic egg could—" He was interrupted by a sudden gasp from the human. Her eyes flew open, revealing startlingly blue irises that locked onto Zyx'lorp with an intensity that made him want to scuttle under the nearest rock. "Hooah," she croaked, her voice rough. "Either I've had way too much of that Arcturian fire whiskey, or I'm surrounded by the cast of a B-grade sci-fi flick." Zyx'lorp bristled, his scales flaring in indignation. "I'll have you know, madam, and I am a highly respected xenobiologist with 3 doctorates and—" Yeah, the human waved a hand dismissively, wincing as she tried to sit up. "Well, listen, Doc, I've got a bit of a situation here. Seems like my little stunt at the rock climbing wall didn't go quite as planned." "Rock climbing?" Qwerty burbled, curiosity overriding their usual professional demeanor. "You mean you deliberately scale vertical surfaces for entertainment?" The human grinned, a gesture that Zyx'lorp found utterly terrifying given the number and sharpness of teeth on display. "You bet your gelatinous posterior I do. Name's Alex, by the way. Extreme sports enthusiast and apparently current medical marvel." Zyx'lorp felt a headache coming on. "Ms. Alex, you have a potentially life-threatening obstruction near your heart. I'm afraid we'll need to prepare you for immediate surgery." Alex's eyebrows shot up. "Surgery? Nah, I don't think so, Doc. I've got a better idea." And with that, before any of the assembled aliens could react, Alex took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and stopped her own heart. The medical bay erupted into chaos. Alarms blared as the monitors registered the sudden cardiac arrest. Qwerty let out a high-pitched keening noise that threatened to shatter every piece of glassware in the vicinity. And Zyx'lorp? Well, Zyx'lorp seriously considered whether it was too late to change careers and become a nice, peaceful deep space asteroid miner. "She's killing herself," screeched the Venusian delegate, his antennae now tied in knots from stress. "Quiet," Zyx'lorp snapped, his professional training finally kicking in. "Qwerty, prepare the defibrillator. We need to restart her heart immediately." But as they rushed to grab the equipment, Alex's eyes snapped open again. She took another deep, shuddering breath and to everyone's astonishment, the monitors began registering a heartbeat once more. "Whew," Alex exhaled, sitting up and rubbing her chest. "That was a close one. Thought I might have overdone it for a second there." The assembled aliens stared at her in stunned silence. It was Qwerty who finally found their voice, or rather their ability to vibrate in a way that approximated speech. You stopped your own heart, voluntarily, and then restarted it." Alex shrugged, as if this was a perfectly normal thing to do on a Wednesday afternoon. "Yeah, it's a neat little trick I picked up during my time with some Tibetan monks. Comes in handy when you've got a pesky blood clot threatening to ruin your day." Zyx'lorp felt faint. He gripped the edge of the examination table for support, his scales changing to a sickly green hue. But that's impossible. No sentient being can simply will their vital organs to stop and start at whim." Alex grinned again, this time with a hint of mischief. "Welcome to Earth, Doc. We make the impossible our bitch on a daily basis." As if to demonstrate her point, she hopped off the table, stretching her limbs as casually as if she'd just woken up from a nap, rather than performed a feat of biological manipulation that defied all known laws of physiology. "Now," she said, clapping her hands together, "who's up for round 2 at the rock wall? I bet I can make it to the top this time without any pesky near-death experiences." Zyx'lorp felt his last shred of sanity slipping away. He turned to Qwerty, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Cancel my remaining appointments. I think I need to lie down for, let's say the next solar cycle or 2. As Alex sauntered out of the medical bay, leaving a wake of bewildered aliens in her path, Zyx'lorp couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Somewhere out there in the vast expanse of the galaxy, an entire planet full of these death-defying, logic-defying creatures was going about their daily lives, probably inventing new ways to cheat death before breakfast. She shuddered. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. Dr. Zyx'lorp's report to the Galactic Medical Board later that week was met with a mixture of disbelief, fascination, and outright terror. The idea that a species could evolve on a planet so inhospitable that they developed the ability to manipulate their own vital functions at will was unsettling, to say the least. But as news of Alex's feat spread through the conference, embellished with each retelling, until it sounded more like a tall tale than a medical anomaly, a change began to sweep through the gathered delegates. Fear gave way to curiosity, and curiosity to a grudging admiration. These humans, it seemed, were not to be underestimated. As for Alex, well, last anyone heard, she was planning an expedition to scale the notorious ice cliffs of Europa. Something about pushing the boundaries of interplanetary extreme sports. Zyx'lorp, upon hearing this news, promptly booked himself a one-way ticket to the most remote, human-free sector of the galaxy he could find. Some things, he decided, were best observed from a very, very safe distance. And so, as the Galactic Medical Conference drew to a close, one thing became abundantly clear. The universe had better brace itself. Humanity was here, and they were rewriting the rules of what was possible, one death-defying stunt at a time. In the grand tapestry of cosmic evolution, it seemed that Earth had produced not just a new species, but a force of nature, a walking, talking, heart-stopping reminder that in the face of impossible odds, life finds a way. And sometimes that way involves giving the laws of biology the middle finger and dancing on the edge of mortality just for the thrill of it. As one particularly poetic Arcturian summed it up in the conference's closing ceremony, in a universe of order and predictability, humans are the wild card, the joker in the deck, the quantum fluctuation that nobody saw coming. They are the living embodiment of chaos theory, wrapped in a fragile skin sack and propelled by an indomitable spirit. He paused for dramatic effect, his bioluminescent tentacles pulsing with emotion. May the cosmos have mercy on us all. The applause that followed was thunderous, tinged with equal parts excitement and trepidation. For better or worse, humanity had made its mark on the galactic stage, and if Alex was any indication, they were just getting started. Months after the infamous Galactic Medical Conference, Dr. Zyx'lorp found himself in an unlikely position, hunched over a desk in his new research lab on Earth, surrounded by stacks of data pads and holographic displays showing the most bizarre collection of medical case studies he'd ever encountered. He tried to retire, he really had, but the siren call of scientific discovery, and if he was being honest, a morbid fascination with these death-defying Deathworlders had proven too strong to resist. His current project, a comprehensive study on the physiological adaptations that allowed humans to survive in environments that would kill most species outright. It was grueling work, made all the more challenging by the fact that his test subjects seemed to view mortal peril as just another Tuesday. Case in point, the file currently floating in front of him, detailing the exploits of one Alex Chen, extreme sports enthusiast and part-time yoga instructor. Zyx'lorp sighed, all four of his hands moving in perfect synchronization to massage his temples. "Computer," he said, his voice weary but tinged with unmistakable excitement, "begin recording." File name, humanity's middle finger to evolution, a xenobiologist's lament. The computer chimed in acknowledgement, and Zyx'lorp began to speak. "Day 127 of my exile, I mean research sabbatical on Earth. I find myself once again questioning my life choices as I review the latest data on human subject A, henceforth referred to as the cardiac contortionist. It appears that Ms. Chen's ability to voluntarily control her cardiovascular function is not, as we initially suspected, a unique mutation. Rather, it seems to be an extreme example of a physiological trait present in varying degrees throughout the human population. The implications of this are staggering. Preliminary studies suggest that this ability evolved as a survival mechanism, allowing early humans to play dead when confronted by predators, or to slow their metabolic processes in times of extreme scarcity. However, in true human fashion, they've taken this evolutionary safeguard and turned it into a party trick. I've received reports of humans using this ability for everything from deep-sea diving without equipment to surviving in the vacuum of space for brief periods. There's even a subculture of biohackers attempting to expand these abilities through a combination of meditation, specialized training, and what they cheerfully refer to as reckless self-experimentation. The Galactic Science Academy is going to have a collective aneurysm when they read this report, assuming, of course, that they believe it. Half the time, I'm not sure I believe it myself, and I'm living in the thick of it. But perhaps the most baffling aspect of all this is the human's attitude towards their own remarkable abilities. They treat these death-defying feats with a casualness that borders on the absurd. Case in point, Ms. Chen's follow-up appointment after her heart-stopping performance at the conference. I quote, "Yeah, so I've been working on this new technique, thinking of calling it the double-decker cardiac arrest. Basically, I stop my heart, restart it, then stop it again, all within the span of a minute. Figure it might come in handy if I ever decide to try that free diving expedition in the methane lakes of Titan." I don't even know where to begin addressing the levels of insanity in that statement. The casual disregard for personal safety, the complete misunderstanding of basic survival instincts, the sheer audacity of it all, it's simultaneously terrifying and awe-inspiring. And yet I can't help but wonder, what are the limits of human potential? If they can achieve this level of physiological control through sheer force of will and a blatant disregard for the impossible, what else might they be capable of? Though more importantly, how do we as a galactic community prepare for a species that seems hell-bent on treating the laws of nature as mere suggestions? I fear we may be witnessing the emergence of a true galactic superpower not through advanced technology or military might, but through the human ability to look at certain death and say, "Hold my beer." Further study is clearly needed. I'll be extending my stay on Earth indefinitely. Someone needs to document this madness, if only so future generations will understand why the rest of the galaxy developed a collective eye twitch whenever humanity is mentioned. End recording. And computer, send a requisition order for more antacids. I have a feeling I'm going to need them. As the computer chirped its acknowledgement, Zyx'lorp leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting to the window. Outside, a group of humans was engaged in what appeared to be a game of ultimate frisbee, but with the added twist of playing on rocket-powered hoverboards. Because of course they were. He shook his head, a rueful chuckle escaping him. "Humanity," he muttered, "you magnificent, terrifying bastards. What will you think of next?" Little did he know, at that very moment, Alex Chen was putting the finishing touches on her plans for an extreme meditation retreat on the surface of Mercury. Because when you're a human, the only true limit is your imagination and maybe the melting point of your spacesuit. The universe, it seemed, was in for one hell of a ride. As news of humanity's death-defying exploits spread across the galaxy, reactions varied wildly from species to species. The Vulpinoids of Sirius Prime responded by locking themselves in their underground bunkers, convinced that these unkillable apes were harbingers of the apocalypse. The hive mind of Betelgeuse, always eager for new experiences, began incorporating human-style risk-taking into their collective consciousness, resulting in a brief but memorable period where entire HIV planets engaged in synchronized bungee jumping from low orbit. But perhaps the most unexpected response came from the Zygons of Proxima Centauri, a species known for their careful, methodical approach to, well, everything. Upon hearing tales of human daring, a small but vocal subset of Zygon youth declared it was type of species to live a little ill. The resulting extreme molting fad nearly crashed the planet's economy and left the elders questioning every decision they'd made in the last millennium. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Dr. Zyx'lorp's research was progressing at a breakneck pace, largely because his human test subjects kept breaking their necks and then walking it off like it was nothing more than a mild inconvenience. Day 365 of my Earthbound Odyssey, Zyx'lorp dictated to his long-suffering computer. I've officially been here a full Earth year, and I'm no closer to understanding these beings than when I started. If anything, I'm more confused. Paused, all four eyes blinking in rapid succession as he reviewed his notes. Today's experiment involved observing a group of humans engaging in something called parkour. As near as I can tell, it's an elaborate mating ritual that involves leaping from great heights, narrowly avoiding death, and then posting the footage on something called TikTok. Zyx'lorp shuddered, his scales rippling in a wave of teal and chartreuse. I watched a young male human, let's call him Subject B, or the rubber band man, ite from the roof of a 20-story building, bounce off a series of awnings, flip through the air like some kind of hairless, bipedal flying squirrel, and land in a perfect roll on the sidewalk. He then stood up, brushed himself off, and asked if we could do another take because, and I quote, the lighting wasn't quite right. The xenobiologist let out a long, weary sigh. I'm beginning to suspect that humans don't actually understand the concept of death. Or perhaps they do and they simply don't care. I'm not sure which possibility is more terrifying. But just then, a notification pinged on his holoscreen. It was a message from Alex Chen, the infamous cardiac contortionist who had sparked this whole mad quest for understanding. Zyx'lorp opened it with a mix of dread and anticipation. Yo, Doc Z, the message read, accompanied by a selfie of Alex grinning maniacally while dangling from what appeared to be the edge of a space station. Remember that thing I mentioned about free diving in Titan's methane lakes? Well, funny story. Zyx'lorp didn't even finish reading before he was reaching for his emergency stash of alien liquor. As he poured himself a generous measure of Andromedan brain fuzzer, he couldn't help but laugh. It was a sound caught somewhere between hysteria and genuine amusement. Computer, he said, raising his glass in a mock toast, new entry. Title: Humanity's Guide to Galactic Domination, Step 1. Convince everyone else you're immortal. As he dictated his increasingly bizarre observations, Zyx'lorp found himself reflecting on the strange turn his life had taken. He'd come to Earth expecting to unravel the mysteries of human physiology. Instead, he'd found himself on the front lines of a quiet revolution, one that was reshaping the very fabric of galactic society. Humans, it seemed, weren't content with merely surviving on their death world. They were determined to export their particular brand of chaos to every corner of the cosmos. And against all odds, it was working. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. A human exchange student on Altair IV had introduced the concept of extreme ironing to the silicon-based lifeforms there, leading to a bizarre craze of beings pressing their crystalline structures into exotic shapes while perched atop active volcanoes. The hive mind of Betelgeuse, not content with bungee jumping, had moved on to trying to recreate human mood swings, resulting in entire star systems flickering on and off like faulty Christmas lights. And then there was the incident with the Vulpinoids. After months of cowering in their bunkers, a group of young rebels had emerged, declaring themselves humanity's biggest fans. They'd started a trend of extreme tail fluffing, which involved charging their fur with static electricity and then trying to hug as many people as possible before the charge dissipated. It was harmless, utterly pointless, and spreading like wildfire across the sector. Zyx'lorp shook his head, chuckling despite himself. He mused aloud, I used to think humans were going to be the death of us all. Now I'm starting to wonder if they might just be the kick in the pants this stuffy old galaxy needed. His computer beeped again, another message from Alex. This one was a video. With a mix of resignation and morbid curiosity, Zyx'lorp hit play. The footage showed Alex clad in a custom-made suit that looked like a cross between deep-sea diving gear and a spacesuit. She was standing on the shore of what could only be one of Titan's methane lakes, the alien landscape stretching out behind her in shades of orange and brown. Hey, Doc Z. Alex's voice came through, slightly distorted by her helmet. Greetings from Titan. I know you're probably having a conniption fit right now, but don't worry. I've got it all under control. I've been practicing that heart-stopping trick, and I've got it down to an art. Plus, I've got a team of the galaxy's finest medics on standby, Well, finest medics who were willing to come to Titan on short notice. Anyway, wish me luck. So with that, Alex turned, gave a jaunty salute to the camera, and dove headfirst into the lake of liquid methane. Zyx'lorp stared at the screen long after the video had ended, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to alert the Galactic Council, to demand they put a stop to this madness before humans managed to accidentally destroy a planet or tear a hole in the space-time continuum. But another part that had been growing steadily over the past year felt a strange swelling of pride. These reckless, impossible creatures were pushing the boundaries of what was possible, and in doing so, they were dragging the rest of the galaxy along with them. "Computer," Zyx'lorp said finally, his voice filled with a newfound determination, "book me a flight to Titan. It's time for some hands-on research." As he began to pack, throwing together an odd assortment of scientific equipment and emergency medical supplies, Zyx'lorp found himself humming a tune. It was an old Earth song Alex had introduced him to, something about it being a kind of magic. He chuckled, imagining the looks on his colleagues' faces when they received his next report. "Humanity," he muttered, shaking his head fondly, "you beautiful disasters, what will you think of next?" As his ship broke through Earth's atmosphere, setting a course for the outer reaches of the solar system, Zyx'lorp felt a thrill of excitement. He was no longer just an observer in humanity's grand adventure. He was a participant. And somewhere out there, in the methane seas of Titan, a woman with a will of steel and a heart that danced to its own rhythm was rewriting the rules of what it meant to be alive in this vast, wondrous universe. The galaxy would never be the same, and honestly, that was probably for the best. After all, in a universe full of wonders, sometimes you need a species crazy enough to poke the unknown with a stick, just to see what happens. In humanity, it seemed it was more than up for the job. As Zyx'lorp's ship disappeared into the starry expanse, a new chapter in galactic history was beginning, from one filled with heart-stopping stunts, death-defying feats, and the inexorable spread of human chaos across the cosmos. And at the center of it all, a simple truth that was becoming clear with each passing day. In a universe governed by the laws of physics, humanity had decided that the laws were more like guidelines anyway. Watch out, Cosmos. The Deathworlders are coming and they're bringing their Parker shoes.